So first up, ports. Now a port seems simple, you take a game and you put it on another platform. Most people say the word port to refer to a game that was straight up ported, even though a remaster is technically still a port. But what about the era of games where different platforms had different versions of games? Is that a port or a remake? But can it be called a remake if it's made alongside the original at the same time? But then it's not a port because it's a different thing. So is that adaptation then? But that's a pretty wide term, so what do we call that? For example, Star Wars The Force Unleashed on PS2 is different to PS3. The Transformers games are different on Wii and PS3 and 360. Or a more famous example, Spider-Man 2, the tie-in game, is very different on PC than it is to its three console versions, the GameCube, Xbox and PlayStation. I mean, technically you're taking a game and putting it on another platform, where it's a different engine, a different team, different gameplay, different story. So what is that? And that is a port. Then why are we calling that a port when the same game on a different platform is also a port? Now this is kind of meaningless nowadays because games don't have different versions anymore. But over time, remakes and remasters have had their line bird. So next up, remasters. A remaster is a game with better graphics. Sounds simple. But then, what point does it become the same game? Because Demon Souls is a port to a different engine, to a different platform. Direct port, same code. The gameplay is exactly the same, taken from the original. Yet people call that an authentic remake. It's authentic because it's the same code. So it's a remaster then, right? But then the graphics are completely remade, the voice acting is redone, the music is redone, the animations are redone, the sound effects are redone. But everything with the game is still the same. The animations may be new, but the time and the hitboxes is still the same. Everything is the same, it just looks different. If you blindfold yourself and put earplugs in, you won't tell the difference. I mean, you probably won't be able to tell, that's a bad example. But then, okay, just say that a remaster still, because it's the same code. What about Crisis Core Reunion? A game which is still the original code, but it's been updated with updated music, voice acting, and new assets like Demon Souls. But unlike Demon Souls, it's actually had heavily adjusted gameplay. Even though it's technically an update of the original, is it different enough to be a remake now? Unlike Demon Souls, Square Enix actually more transparently says it's a remaster. But okay then, that's a remaster. But then a very different caliber of remaster to Demon Souls, which is already a very different caliber to a remaster to something like Dark Souls 1, where it's literally the same thing, but now higher resolution and high FPS, just like a port would be. But it looks slightly different, and it literally says Dark Souls Remastered, but then there's a tier above that. When we have Near Replicant, which didn't have redone voice acting, and I don't think it had redone music, but the graphics are heavily adjusted, the gameplay is adjusted, but by Crisis Core. But unlike Crisis Core, it has brand new story parts in it. Main story parts in between the story and a brand new ending route. I would say all those are remasters, but then, besides Dark Souls, I would argue Dark Souls isn't a remaster. But then, most people wouldn't say that. And even if you get people to agree on that, one thing is for sure, and that they're definitely not anywhere near comparable to their originals. Like, Demon Souls is Demon Souls with better graphics. New Replicant is heavily adjusted to be quite different. But then, if we start calling Near Replicant a remake, what do we call Final Fantasy VII? A game which did not reuse any original code from the PS1, and is completely different. It's ground up completely different. Well, you may say that's way too different to be a remake. That's like some retelling or reimagining or like adaptation, like when someone. But then, if that's not a remake, what is? a game built from the ground up with no code being used, but still telling a story that's very much one-to-one to the original? Okay, that can make sense. But then we still don't know what anything else is. We still haven't figured out the boundaries between remake and remaster for something like The Replicant, and we still don't know what Final Fantasy 7 Remake is. And again, all these are just marketing terms, because Final Fantasy 7 Remake is a literally called Remake in the title. Like, it's literally the subtitle, it's not a description, it's the title of the game. And then Rebirth is not Final Fantasy 7 Remake Rebirth or Remake Part 2, it's Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth. What a lot of people took back 4 years ago, when Remake was released, as them saying, that was the remake, now it's time for random stuff. But Rebirth is pretty accurate to the original, enough where I would say it still could be a remake. And now all these terms are getting worse and worse, now not only are we confused by them, the companies are just as confused. And then we have games like The Legend of Heroes Trails in the Sky. Again, it's a complete ground up remake, but that game hasn't been released yet, so we're not too sure about what's different about it, and it has been confirmed that there will be some story changes, but it's definitely not going to be a change the fate Whisperers thing that Final Fantasy 7 was. So that's a remake, right? But then again, it's not comparable to something like Demon's Souls, which is also called a remake. And even if you say Demon's Souls isn't a remake, that doesn't change the fact it was marketed, advertised, and almost universally agreed to be one, even though it is the same code on a different engine. But then, if we take a different engine as a remake, which many people say, oh yeah, I said mention, Crisis Core is also on a different engine to the original, but I don't think Near Replicant is. Okay then, but then, if a different engine is a remake, what do we call it when Minecraft changes Java version? What do we call it when Satisfactory got a Unreal Engine 5 update? Like literally, like update, as in like, the game was in early access, and before it released 1.0, it got Unreal Engine 5. That's not a remake, right? But if changing the gameplay is a remake, then what do we call games? What do we call Minecraft 1.9? Is that a remake of Minecraft? Like, there's so much you can think about, and you'll never get there, because no one has ever thought of proper terms, and now it's way too late to go back. Obviously, like for something like Minecraft, that's not a new version, so that can't really count. I was mostly joking there. But on a serious note, what if a game was remade on the same engine? Like theoretically, it was remade in the same engine, from the ground up. What would we call that then if we define it by the engine? A remaster? But then it's not. Then it was just defined by engine, which people put way too much emphasis on. Like I hear some people say, "Oh, this engine affects that and that." Like game engines are way more open than people realize, and with how much long engines last, and even when engines die, games take so long to make that games come out like 5 years after the next revision of the engine comes out. Like we're still going to be getting UE4 games for a long time, and Final Fantasy 7 Part 3 is going to be released in 2028, and they may still potentially use UE4. So like the idea of a game getting remade on the same engine isn't too out there. But then other terms are thrown around like rebuild and reboot and reimagining. Well, reboot is quite different. Like, a reboot is often accepted to be like starting over again. It's like Tomb Raider 2013. It's not remaking anything. It's not going back to Tomb Raider 1 and saying let's do that again. But like it's like redoing the beginning. It's like it's resetting the timeline. But not all reboots reset the timeline. Some reboots are more of a shift in direction. So again, now we're not even talking about changing games. We're talking about universes and timelines. Which, to be fair, actually goes pretty well with Final Fantasy 7 Remake. But then, what's a soft reboot compared to a hard reboot? Nothing makes sense. None of these words have meaning. Reimagining is often interchangeable with remake. But then you have something like Ratchet and Clank. Ratchet and Clank 2016, I wouldn't say is a reimagining or a reboot or a remake. It's like, it's an adaptation of a film that happens to tell the origin story of Ratchet and Clank, which would technically mean it is like a reboot, but it was a one-off, and it wasn't meant to be a reboot. So what is that? It's like some weird middle ground in between everything. But that's often referred to as a reimagining, a remake, even though people often say that it is a remake as well, but most people say that's a reimagining. But that game reused some level layouts from the original. Not all, some. So then what is that then? like half, a third, a fourth, 1/4 remaster, 1/4 remake, 1/4 reimagining, 1/4 reboot. Throw in some movie adaptation tie-in game on top. What is that then? It's an anomaly. And again, just like how you can go from a remaster like Dark Souls, or a remaster like Assassin's Creed 3 or Rogue, which all suck by the way, you can get remasters that are a bit better, like Tomb Raider 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 5, and 6, where it's definitely still in remaster territory. Like, it's not near Demon Souls level to say it's a remake because of the graphics, and it doesn't change gameplay enough to say it's a remaster like Crisis Core or Near Replicant. And the same applies for remakes and reboots and everything. Like, the quality and the changes from the original vary so much. I lost all excitement for remakes, because I hear a new remake leaked when it comes out and it's like the same game but it looks slightly different. And that's just not how I define a remake. But these terms shouldn't be based on opinion, nor should they be based on whatever the company decides that day or what kind of false marketing tactic the company wants that day. They should have clear and thought out meanings, but they don't. And I have my own way to think about these things, but I only think of them this way. So you have port, it is the game, but on a different platform. It could have graphical improvements like shadow resolution and draw distance, or upscaled textures, but that's about it. Then I say we have remaster. The models and textures and writing are redone. Then I say we have an overhaul, like Crisis Core or Near Replicant. There may be new content, there may be balance and combat overhaul, and the graphics are way more redone to the point where it may look like a modern title. Then we have remake, like completely ground up new game like Final Fantasy VII. And I'm gonna call it a remake, even Rebirth. And I'll say something like Trials in the Sky or Resident Evil are the same thing, just to different scale, just much more scale than a 3-part remake like Final Fantasy VII. But then no one else thinks this way, so it just gets other people confused. And because it's gaming, no one gives a damn, so there's no legal definitions, so companies are about to say whatever, even though I would technically say saying the game was built from the ground up is just straight up false marketing if it isn't, like Demon Souls. Like, if you want to put out a remake, you could push that and say, oh, this bad word has no meaning, so it's legal, it's fine. But it factually is not built from the ground up. Unless you're talking about the graphics alone, which then that's true, but you can't talk about the game as a whole like that. I don't know if I'm the only one who is this stressed out by these terms, because for the past few years, it feels like more and more people are just starting to say whatever. Everything is a reboot, everything's a remaster, everything's a remake, everything's a reimagining, everything's a sequel, it's all the same thing. Does anything matter anymore? No, it doesn't, because you're talking to some guy discussing terminology used in video game marketing. It's probably a waste of your time, and if you made it this far in the video, I'm sorry, you had to listen to me rant for 15 minutes. It's not like anyone's going to watch this video, it's not like the entire community is going to band together and create proper names for these things. Maybe we even need new terms, because we definitely need new terms actually, because as I said before, not only do you have to deal with things being mislabeled, but there are games that are going to be labeled as a remaster or a remake that are a remaster or a remake, but very different to what people might imagine from those terms. And that's just how it is in gaming, where you have different scopes, but that won't really do much if things are still mislabeled. And if you're wondering, I'm confused, then yes, this entire video probably made you way more confused. But that's kind of the point. This is such a annoying thing about video game marketing, and where people view remakes and remasters, and an error where people say it's the remaster error, it's the remake error. People still seem to not know what that means. I know I don't. You probably don't, and if you did, you don't anymore. I don't know. Thanks for watching, I guess. And no, the channel isn't dead yet. It's not going to be dead. I'll upload once in a while. That's my upload schedule. That's how it's going to always be. For better or worse, I'm not sure. Better or worse,